First of all, a lot of you don't have your camera on, so it's kind of nice to see you. So if you don't have your camera on, you might want to turn it on. I'm going to call the meeting of the Environmental Rules Board to order. It is October the 9th, 2024. I'm going to call the roll. Mr. Davidson? Mr. Davidson? Mr. Etzler? Dr. Nemec?
Here.
Mr. Horn?
Present.
Mr. Rulon? He's probably on his tractor. Mr. Zaire?
Here.
Ms. Nelson?
Here.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Ms. Jaworski?
Present.
Mr. Jaworski?
Present.
Mr. Bortner?
Here.
Ms. Brown?
Here.
Dr. Alexandrovich?
Here.
Ms. Kaczynski?
Here.
Mr. Ketzenberger?
Here.
And the chair is present. So we definitely have a quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We have 12 present. So it only takes 8 for a quorum. The first order of business is the approval of the summary of the minutes of our August 14th, 2024 meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as distributed? If not, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in
Second.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The minutes, the summary of the minutes are approved. Mr. Rockensous is at some kind of conference, I think, today, Alice State, and Chief of Staff Pravani Stover will make his report.
Good afternoon, everybody. Brian apologizes that he can't be here today, but he is at a Great Lakes Commission meeting in Rochester, New York. So I'm sure he's having a ton of fun, but this is all of you guys. So we normally gives a staffing report or staffing update. We actually don't have a ton of staffing changes since the August meeting when he last updated you on all the leadership changes that we had in the Office of Land Quality. The one big change we have had recently in the last couple of weeks is that we lost our IT director, Jeremy Chenevert, to IoT. He took another role at another agency and we're very excited for him, but we'll miss him. And it's sort of an odd time in the administration with the election coming up and a transition to be hiring an executive level role like that. So we're talking to IoT and looking at our options and figuring out how to fill that gap until we have a little bit more certainty in what the agency is going to look like for sure. So that's probably the only staffing change. We just wrapped up our intern class not too long ago. We had about 25 or 28 interns for the summer and all of them have taken off and they're fabulous. It's a great program and we end up hiring a lot of them full time. So we're always looking at ways to better recruit for more interns, make sure we have amazing folks that we can bring on in full-time roles as soon as they graduate. So that's one of the fun things. We have also recently ramped up our recruitment efforts and are trying to have more of a presence at job fairs across the state, particularly at schools that have stronger science and engineering programs. And we're actually starting to focus on sending alumni of those schools back to the school that is having the job fair to try and build those connections with students. So the Purdue engineering grads we're sending to the Purdue engineering fairs so they can really connect with students, talk about the benefits of state employment and public service and specifically working at IDEM versus just sending HR to those job fairs like we have in the past. So we've gotten really positive feedback from staff who've gotten to participate in those things and also the students that we're connecting with. So we're collecting a ton of resumes, getting a lot of students interested both in our internship programs and full-time work with us. So really excited about that. And besides that, most of what is keeping us busy is preparing for legislative session, which is a little bit wild because it feels like session just ended 5 minutes ago and we're already ramping back up for the 2025 session. But our big agenda item, we hope pending approval from the incoming administration, whoever that is to have an increased focus on cybersecurity. We had an attack on a wastewater facility in Tipton a couple months ago, I think in April, and then there was another attack on a drinking water facility here recently. And we have realized there's no state level notification. So if a facility gets hit, they're required to report it to the federal government, but not the state government. And we ended up finding out about those attacks a couple days after they happened, which is really problematic for us. And at the federal level, they take a certain security clearance because of the sensitivity of the information involved. But from our perspective, we don't need to know what country is attacking us or for what reason or what their motivation is, what they're asking for. We just need to know that a wastewater drinking water facility was hit, so we can potentially deploy resources to make sure that people are drinking safe water. Because if people start messing with particularly drinking water facilities and changing the levels of different chemicals, that can be catastrophic. So the proposal we're looking at legislatively is twofold. One, we want to require a state level notification, and we're talking to other agencies like IoT, DHS, the IURC, other folks about how to better plan this. But the idea is to have a one-stop shop of some kind so people can call one phone number with the state and know that that information is going to be dispatched to whatever agency is impacted, and not have people thinking, oh gosh, do I have to call IDEM? Do I have to call DHS? I'm not sure what to do. Make it really simple for folks. So we get that information that we need really quickly. And then also we are realizing that what we're calling cyber hygiene is an issue that a lot of the wastewater and drinking water facilities have passwords that are password or 12345, or really basic things that make them really easy targets for foreign actors. And there are a lot of free, really high quality trainings out there from CISA and EPA and other organizations. So we want to require water facilities to do some kind of a vulnerability analysis, to take a look at where they are, where their vulnerabilities might be, and use some of the free resources out there, or use our team, use DHS resources, whatever, to put better cyber hygiene practices in place to reduce the risk of them being a target. So that's sort of what we're working on. That's what keeps us busy at a high level. Also, it's going to be a budget session, so we're likely going to be seeking more funding for our IT modernization project. You might recall that we got $5.5 million for that last budget cycle 2 years ago. We're probably going to be seeking another $7 million to continue those efforts. But happy to answer any questions if folks have any. But that's the update.
Yes, any questions?
At our last meeting, this is Joanne. I think Ken asked for an organizational chart since you've been going through staff changes, and I didn't get one, so I put the request back in.
Yeah, I can pull that as soon as I get back to the office this afternoon and have it distributed to everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Any other questions? Well, thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Billy Franklin will give a rulemaking report.
Good afternoon. My name is Billy Franklin. I'm in the Rules Development section of the Office of Legal Counsel. There are a few things that I wanted to bring to your attention. First off, I wanted to begin by letting you know that you'll find a slight change to the Emergency Affirmative Defense Provisions draft rule that is in your packet. This is different compared to the version that was previously sent to you. Under 326 IAC 2-7-1 subdivision 19 clause F, they originally marked subdivision 42L. I'm sorry, they as an LSA originally marked 42L and inserted 39, which is accurate. They failed to correct this on the final version, and once again, we corrected it on our version, which is in front of you now. Secondly, you are probably aware that we originally had CCR down for preliminary adoption today. That has been moved to the December meeting so we can incorporate the most recent federal rules for legacy bonds, which will become effective early November. We also wanted to make sure we are addressing the comments and making amendments as necessary based on the extended comment period. So we are reflecting those federal rules. And last but not least, you probably have by now received an email from Carla asking about your board terms. If you have not responded to her, please do so soon. And as far as our next board meeting, we are scheduled for December 11th. And we are anticipating on having Kaiser Aluminum and Emergency Affirmative Defense down for our final adoption. And we also hope to have a few rules ready for preliminary adoption. That includes coal combustion residual CCR, lead and copper, NOx rack, and waste tire provisions. We will also have a non-rule policy document for water quality review standards that will be presented on that meeting as well. That is all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions for Billy?
Would you repeat the list of anticipated regs?
Sure. For final adoption, it will be Kaiser Aluminum and the Emergency Affirmative Defense Rule. And for preliminary, we have waste tire revisions, NOx fracked, lead and copper, and CCR.
Thank you.
And I would also like to remind people, because I've gotten a reminder as well, some of the people on the board are due for that online ethics training again. And I think the deadline is coming up for that pretty soon. So if you've gotten an email about that, probably need to go and take that. Okay, today we have hearings for the following regular rule board actions: final adoption of titles 326, 327, and 329 readoptions, preliminary adoption of emergency affirmative defense. Since the readoptions are almost identical, there will be a single presentation for all three rules and then separate votes for each of them. As a reminder, if you wish to testify in any of today's hearings, please fill out a comment card and give it to Carla back at the sign-in table. If you're online, then you'll raise your hand when the time comes. The rules being considered at today's meeting were included in board packets and are available for public inspection at the Office of Legal Counsel, 13th floor, Indiana Government Center North. The entire board packet is also available on IDEM's website at least 1 week prior to each board meeting. A written transcript of today's meeting will be made. The transcript and any written submissions will be open for public inspection at the Office of Legal Counsel. A copy of the transcript will be posted on the rules page of the agency website when it becomes available. Will the official reporter for the cause stand? Raise your right hand and state your name, please.
Lindy Meyer.
Do you solemnly affirm that you will keep complete and true notes of all that transpires and prepare a transcript thereof and faithfully perform all duties imposed upon you as an official reporter of the state of Indiana?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Okay, this is a public hearing before the Environmental Rules Board of the State of Indiana concerning final adoption of the Title 326. I will now enter Exhibit A, the preliminarily adopted rule, into the record of the hearing. Billy Franklin will present, as she said, all three rules.
With the implementation of House and Rule Act 1623, a rule now expires on January 1st of the 5th year after the year in which a rule takes effect under Indiana Code 422 2.6. Due to the elimination of exemptions in Indiana Code 422 2.5, there are no longer any rules that do not expire, also known as forever rules. With that in mind, we have decided to readopt our rules as a whole package to avoid having them expired as of January 1st, 2025. Readopting the titles in their entirety and keep all the rules on the same schedule for readoption every 5 years will make it easier to ensure that we do not have any rules that inadvertently expire. Today, I'm presenting 3 rule-making actions for readoption, 1 for each title, 326, 327, and 329. We provided a 30-day comment period for these readoptions. The comment period ran from August 21st, 2024 through September 20th of 2024. We received no comments. We ask that the board approve each of these readoptions in its entirety without amendments, so we don't run the risk of our agency rules expiring. I am happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Do we have any
This is Ted
speaker
Nemec.
cards?
I have
Yes,
one
Dr.
question.
Huey.
This relates
Yes.
to 327 and under section Roman numeral 6, where there's a table including a column on the far right regarding fines, fees, and other fiscal elements. There are multiple locations where they talk about fees that are proscribed. And I question whether they have made an error in saying that they are proscribed, which normally means that they're banned or prohibited, but maybe rather they mean prescribed or specified or something similar to that. Thank you.
We didn't make any amendments to these rules. We just adopted them as whole. If there's anything that needs to be amended in these rules, we will take that action separately.
Will you check on that, please?
I will.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Any speaker cards?
No, ma'am.
Anyone online? Any raised hands? Okay. The hearing is concluded. The board will now consider final adoption of Title 326. Is there any further board discussion? Do I have a motion for final adoption of the rule as presented?
So moved. This is Ted Nemec.
Who said the second?
Harry Kazerski.
Okay. Call the roll. Mr. Davidson? Mr. Etzler?
Yes.
Dr. Nemec?
Yes.
Mr. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Rulon? Mr. Zaire?
Yes.
Ms. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Jaworski?
Aye.
Mr. Bortner?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Alexandrovich?
Yes.
Ms. Krasinski?
Yes.
Mr. Ketzenberger?
Yes.
The chair votes aye. The vote is 13 ayes, 0 nays. The rule has been finally adopted. This is a public hearing before the Environmental Rules Board of the State of Indiana concerning final adoption of the Title 327. I will now present Exhibit B, the preliminarily adopted rule, into the record. The rule has already been presented. Are there any speaker cards for this one?
No, ma'am.
Anyone online? Any board member have a question? The hearing is concluded. The board will now consider final adoption of the Title 327. Is there board discussion? Motion needs to be made to finally adopt the rules as presented.
I would so move. Chris Horn.
Is there a second?
Second, Katie Nelson.
Okay, call the roll. Mr. Davidson? Mr. Etzler,
Yes.
Dr. Nemec,
Yes.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Zaire,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Jaworski,
Yes.
Mr. Bortner,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Alexandrovich,
Yes.
Ms. Korzinski,
Yes.
Mr. Ketzenberger.
Yes.
The chair votes aye. The vote tally is 13 ayes, 0 nays. The rule has been adopted. This is a public hearing before the Environmental Rules Board of the State of Indiana concerning final adoption of the Title 326. I will now introduce Exhibit C, the preliminarily adopted rule, into the record of the hearing. The rule has already been presented. Are there any speaker cards for this one?
No, ma'am.
Any questions from anyone? If not, the hearing is concluded. The board will now consider final adoption of the Title 329. You know what? There's a typo that I read back at the beginning. This is for final adoption of Title 329, not 326. I want to make sure that that's understood. The board will now consider final adoption of the Title 329. Is there any further board discussion? The motion needs to be made for final adopt the rule as presented.
This is Ted Nemec. So moved.
Your second? Your second?
Chris Horn. Yes.
Okay, call the roll. Mr. Davidson, Mr. Etzler,
Yes.
Dr. Nemec,
Yes.
Mr. Horn, Mr. Rulon, Mr. Zaire,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Jaworski,
Aye.
Mr. Bortner,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Alexandrovich,
Yes.
Ms. Kozinski,
Yes.
Mr. Ketzenberger.
Yes.
The chair votes aye. That is 13 ayes, 0 nays. The board has adopted final adoption of Title 329. Okay. This is the public hearing before the Environmental Rules Board of the State of Indiana concerning preliminary adoption of the Emergency Affirmative Defense Rule. I will now introduce Exhibit D, the proposed rule, into the record of the hearing. The rule has already been presented. Keelan Walsh will present this rule. Oh, it says it's already been presented, and then I think there's also another typo here. I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm Keelan Walsh. I'm here to present the rule. It is the Emergency Affirmative Defense Provisions Rulemaking. It's LSA 24-318. The federal emergency affirmative defense provisions in 40 CFR 70.6G and 40 CFR 71.6G established an affirmative defense for sources to assert in enforcement cases brought for noncompliance with technology-based emission limitations in operating permits if the exceedances occur due to qualifying emergency circumstances. These provisions have never been required elements of state operating permit programs and were removed from federal regulations on July 24th, 2023, because they are inconsistent with the Clean Air Act and US EPA's interpretation of the Act's enforcement structure.
Consequently, US EPA requires each state with a Part 70 program to submit a program revision or request a submission extension by August 21st, 2024 to remove similar affirmative defense provisions from EPA-approved Title V programs. Item timely submitted a request for an extension to submit its program revision, which is now due on August 21st of 2025. Although states may not retain Title V provisions establishing an affirmative defense to noncompliance with federal requirements, US EPA is allowing states to choose whether to retain certain aspects of their existing program regulations, such as the definition of emergency, associated reporting and record-keeping requirements, and prompt reporting to support functions unrelated to affirmative defense. This rulemaking proposes to revise rule language at 326 IAC 2-7-16 and 326 IAC 2-8-12 to remove the emergency affirmative defense provisions from Indiana's EPA-approved Title V program, consistent with US EPA's removal of these provisions in 40 CFR 70.6G and 40 CFR 71.6G. The proposed amendments will also remove the emergency provisions from its FESOP program, which is also federally approved and is part of Indiana's state implementation plan. Repealing these sections renders other rule language obsolete, including the definition of emergency, health-based emission limit, and technology-based emission limit at 326 IAC 2-7-1, and the requirement to specify permit conditions to which the emergency provision applies at 326 IAC 2-7-5. Accordingly, this rulemaking proposes to remove these provisions and clarifies that proper reporting under 326 IAC 1-6-2 satisfies the Title V deviation report requirement. Additionally, this rule amends the malfunction rule at 326 IAC 1-6-1 to ensure regulatory continuity with the reporting and record-keeping requirements being removed by the repeal of the emergency provisions. The proposed amendments revert to the applicability and notification requirements that were in place prior to the promulgation of the Title V and FESOP emergency provisions. Prior to the creation of Indiana's Title V and FESOP programs, 326 IAC 1-6 applied to all permitted sources. The malfunction rule also once contained affirmative defense provisions, but they were required to be removed from 326 IAC 1-6 in 2016. This rulemaking brings Title V and FESOP sources back under 326 IAC 1-6, which imposes reporting and record-keeping requirements that are functionally equivalent to those found in the emergency provisions being repealed by this rulemaking. Because the malfunction rules requirements are functionally equivalent to those in the to-be-repealed emergency provisions, sources should experience relatively no regulatory burden by becoming subject to 326 IAC 1-6 once again. Item therefore requests that the board preliminarily adopt this rule as presented, and program staff are available to answer any further questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Keelan?
This is Joanne. I do have one question. Would there be any language in source permits that conflict with these changes?
I might defer to you.
Can I answer that? Hi, I'm Phil Perry. I'm the Deputy Assistant Commissioner for the Office of Air Quality. And in terms of, we will be, once this rule is passed, we will be required to amend all the Title V and FESOP permits to remove the emergency provision languages. Jenny Acker, our branch chief, is aware of this. And we are developing a process to amend those permits once the rule becomes effective. We cannot do that until such time. And so that's the plan.
So there's no way to wait until it's time to renew those permits? You've got to do it kind of right away?
We have to do it right away. EPA allows for a period of time, and that's why we asked for an extension until August of 2025 to get this rule passed. So EPA removed those provisions last year, and so we're under a clock basically to get the rule revised and then all those permits change.
So those permits need to be changed by next August?
The EPA program wants us to develop a plan to make those revisions as soon as possible, as soon as rule becomes effective.
Okay,
So
thank
they
you.
didn't set they didn't set a specific time frame, but in the case of FESOP permits, many of those that would be issued here in the next month or so would not expire for 10 years. And that would be inconsistent with the rule once it's passed. So we want to get those permits changed as soon as possible to reflect the current rule.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes. Could you explain a little bit further how the health-based emission limit relates to the emergency provision? It's on page 4 of 30, item number 20 in 326 IAC 271 number 20. It's in the definitions, but I don't see emergency noted in that definition. So just wondering what the relationship is, why that's being eliminated.
Who's speaking?
Yes,
Not me.
I was gonna ask who's speaking. We need your name.
Harry Kazerson.
The provisions under the definition of an emergency in 16 refers back to whether a source can continue to operate under an emergency if it's a health-based standard or a technology-based standard. If it was a health-based standard, they were obligated to shut that unit down immediately. Under a technology-based standard, they could continue to operate under emergency provision. Because the emergency provision is being removed in the affirmative defense, that no longer applies.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone virtually? If not, this hearing is concluded. The board will now consider preliminary adoption of the emergency affirmative defense rule. Any further board discussion? There needs to be a motion to preliminarily adopt the rules as presented. Is there a motion to adopt a
So
preliminary
moved.
adoption?
Bill
Second,
Etzler.
this is Ted Nemec seconding it.
Okay, call the roll.
made the
Mr.
motion?
Dave,
Who made
Who
the
made the
motion?
Bill Etzler.
did you get the second?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Etzler,
Yes.
Dr. Nemec,
Yes.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Rulon, Mr. Zaire,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Jaworski,
Yes.
Mr. Bortner,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Alexandrovich,
Yes.
Ms. Kozinski,
Yes.
Mr. Ketzenberger.
Yes.
The chair votes aye. 13 ayes, 0 nays. The rule has been preliminarily adopted. Now we have a non-rule policy document for action. It's the permitting for the placement of fill material into isolated wetlands. I had questions about this and talked to Nancy King about it yesterday. Who's going to give an explanation of this?
Hi, I'm Martha Clark Metlin, the Assistant Commissioner of the Office of Water Quality. So this is a fairly straightforward non-rule policy document meant to eliminate a bureaucratic step that had been embedded in our rules before. With the changes of the definition of waters of the U.S. at a federal level, that narrows the scope of federal jurisdiction and puts a lot more of the wetlands under state jurisdiction. So before we had a requirement, before you could move on any permit, that you had to have a letter from the Army Corps that said whether it's a federal water or not. Since now so many more waters are, wetlands in particular, are state jurisdictional, that seems like an unnecessary step. And so we wanted to just eliminate that so that we could proceed with permitting in a more expedited way.
Are there questions about this? The question that I had for Ms. King was, did this allow more fill to be dumped into isolated wetlands, which I certainly do not approve of. But it's really different than that.
Yes, it's just more of an administrative correction. You would still need permitting if you exceed the thresholds of fill in your project proposal. We did put this out for a 45-day public notice and we received no comments.
Okay, any more questions about it?
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
If there is a difference or a disagreement about whether it's a state regulated wetland or a federal regulated wetland, there's some discussion about requiring the letter from the Corps. I'm worried about the timing of that. Is there an opportunity to have that determination if there's a question before the filling action begins, if that's the case?
Yes, it would be part of the project proposal and we would have that discussion with the applicant.
Okay, so it wouldn't be a surprise if there was a determination that it came under federal or needed a
It
federal
should not
letter.
be. It should not be. With the way the new definition of waters of the United States is, it's clearer that less waters are protected federally. And so there might be some with impacts that are mixed that have some federal and some state, and you would require that determination from the Corps before we would proceed with permitting.
So the approach from the agency then would be to look at that possibility that there's a conflict between the two areas and
Right,
anticipate
that's
that.
why we say that we need to look at the delineation and characteristics of the site.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
This Joanne again, you may not, crazy question. Is the WOTUS still kind of hung up in litigation and legal wranglings?
Yes.
Forever, probably.
It could be forever, but yes.
Do you know of any deadlines that might be coming sooner or later, or it's kind of all up in the air?
Well, that's up to it's in the courts now, so who knows?
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you. As I understand it, this is an information only presentation. It doesn't take board action, correct?
Thank you.
Okay. Under open matters, other matters, this is an open forum. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board today? No one virtually as well? Well, the next meeting, the Environmental Rules Board is tentatively set for December the 11th, 2024 at 1:30 p.m. in Conference Room A, Indiana Government Center South. The meeting date is tentative and subject to change. We will keep everyone updated that is confirmed or another date is chosen. And again, before we adjourn, I want to apologize for the errors in the script. I didn't get it in time to go over it and make corrections. So I hope it doesn't happen again. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. This is
So-
Ted Nemick.
Second by Katie
Just-
Nelson.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Well, we are adjourned and thank all of you for coming.
Good.
I still miss Stella.